All right, and welcome back to episode 5 of Constructive Criticism. I'm Zach Simmons, joined by my co-host, Kel Law. Kel, how you doing today?
Doing well, man. We've got a guest today. I'm
We
really
do.
excited.
Our first official guest.
Oh, I'm your first?
Your first.
Yeah.
Wow, it's so much more meaningful now.
We'll see what you say when we get done with this.
Terry, again, thank you for joining us. For those of you listening, we have Terry Clinefelter. Terry has been a longstanding member of the construction education community in Oklahoma, between both the University of Oklahoma and OSU. Terry, give us a little bit of your background and, what are you doing today?
Today I'm running, but so a little bit of my background. I've been involved in construction education here in Oklahoma for the past 17 years. Originally out of Florida, born and raised in North Central Florida. Grew up in a construction family. Father was a cabinet maker. Grandfather was a project manager. And so good choices led me to Oklahoma about 2009, and I've loved it here ever since. Been involved in education along with the construction industry. My wife and I own a residential and commercial investment company, which keeps me tied to the industry. She's a project manager, so
there you go.
I get to get told what to do, both professionally and personally, which is always nice. But for the most part, past 16 years, been teaching technical education at Oklahoma State University in Oklahoma City, a 2-year technical college. And past 5 years, been teaching at the University of Oklahoma, a 4-year construction science program. And
Awesome.
At the beginning of this year, I moved down there full time. So
that's awesome. Tell me, I'm really excited about the program that you're working on. Tell us a little bit more about the online bachelor's program for construction management.
So, I mean, if you've been around this industry for any amount of time, what you'll realize is that it is full of people who never started out in life saying, "Hey, I'm going to go work in construction."
Mm-hmm.
This was never, especially for my generation and probably parts of your generation, this was never on that high school like counselor's checklist, right? Saying, "Oh, you can go be a project manager," right? No, they push you every other direction. So what we see in our industry is we have a lot of very talented, very smart people who are full-time parents, full-time employees, and they don't have the ability to be a full-time student. So the online, the ADC program, Adult Completion Program, allows individuals who are working in industry that might have a 2-year education or some college to go ahead and finish up a bachelor's degree in construction science. And it is specifically designed for people who are a full-time mom, dad, project manager, superintendent, and they have all these other requirements on their time. And school is something that needs to fit around their schedule, not the other way.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I think Kale and I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit. There's so many guys that, come up in trades or just come up by being in the industry and never go get the bachelor's, may have an associate's from night school or something of that nature. But, they get to a point in their career that, they're looking around and either they just want it or they need that for career development, career expansion.
Right.
But there's no options for them to go get that management degree.
No, I mean, higher ed, which is your 2-year and your 4-year educational pathways, traditional education, for the most part, has been kind of closed-minded to non-traditional students.
Yeah.
And that is a failing of higher ed in general, that we don't look or provide pathways for these very talented, very intelligent individuals to get that piece of paper that really gets their foot in the door for whatever that next step is for them.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I just want to call out, I did wear my OU shirt today just for you. I am an OSU guy, but this episode sponsored by University of Oklahoma. I'm just kidding.
It's almost like he's going to a bid interview for
University.
University of Oklahoma. Got to dress the part.
Right, he's playing it up.
I'll throw it out there. I wasn't going to have an OU professor on the
I'm
podcast.
over here.
Fair.
Well,
Fair.
and that's one of the nice things is, I spent the previous 16 years working for the OSU system, and I've been working for the OU system for the past 5 years. And there was a time that I overlapped. I still do. And it doesn't, I mean, sports teams and football and Bedlam all aside, it doesn't matter if they go through a OSU system or a OU system. It doesn't matter what that pathway is,
Sure.
as long as it's beneficial to the students.
Absolutely. Both great schools. Both
Yeah.
great individuals in the industry that are coming out of both schools. Well, I think the broader part of why we wanted to have you on the episode is to speak to what construction education is doing well, where it's kind of missing the mark, and just kind of workforce development, how that is kind of shaping the next generation of individuals coming into the industry. And just kind of stay in that vein of, there's a lot of people talking about workforce development, lack of people wanting to join the industry, or, a severe lack of manpower. But I don't really see anybody talking about how we are developing that next generation to take the place.
I mean, we Zach and I had a conversation, not to cut you off, Terry, but like we had a conversation last episode about the misalignment so many times that we see in the industry, where you've got somebody coming in, and whether that's skills, real life experience skills that we're looking for, whether it's on the design side or the construction side, or also the struggle of this experience gap. Like, we've got the old guys that have been doing it for 30 years walking away, and the young people coming in, and we've got great programs, OSU, OU, both. How are they filling that gap for us? How are we responding to this lack of manpower?
Well, I mean, on the education side, we're scared. My expectation on the company and the construction side, you guys are scared.
Right.
And I mean, it is a constant battle, and it's something we've been fighting for decades now. I am very encouraged by what I'm seeing. When I first came out here 16 years ago, there was this divide that if you were going to college, you were going to college for business or arts or
Yeah.
engineering or one of the traditional pathways, right? And where we first saw a lot of hesitation was at that high school level. The teachers, the counselors, the people who are interacting with these young people on a day-to-day basis are saying, "Hey, you need to go to college and you need to go do this." And if someone was to say, "Well, I kind of want to go in construction," and they're like, "No, no, 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 you don't." Um, and I mean, I come out of a generation. I'm older. Think I'm older than both of you guys. Where my dad was in the trades, and what he recognized in the trades during the 70s and 80s is you worked really hard, you got paid very poorly, and you didn't get a lot of respect for being in the trades. And he was a cabinet maker. But the same was the true for electricians, plumbers, HVAC guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's changed. If you call a HVAC or electrician or a plumber now, you're going to pay because those services are in demand. So we're taking care of the salary, we're taking care of the pay difference, and we're starting to see a change in what the people around these young people are saying about the trades. And be it a 2-year, 4-year construction pathway, be it a trades, electrician, plumber, HVAC tech license, or be it just go out and work. Counselors, teachers, and most importantly, parents are starting to recognize that my young person can have a very successful career going into the industry and not going to college. And there's a lot of wraparound organizations that have jumped in to try and promote this. I'm privileged to sit on a board of Construct My Future, which is a nonprofit organization that specifically looks at how to promote construction career pathways to young people. And we don't say what way you have to go. We just try and say, hey, you can go be a welder. You can go be an electrician. You can go be a plumber. You can go be a project manager. Go do what you want to do if you think it's interesting. And you see a coalition of 4-year, 2-year union, trade, career tech, high school people who are all saying, hey, these are good pathways for young people. Now, you're losing so many skilled people so fast that it's hard to fill that vacuum. Very hard.
I think we said last episode the data is showing that the average age of the construction worker is 58 across the United States. It was either 50, 54, or 58. And that's a problem.
Yeah, those guys are getting ready to hang up their tool belt and say, I'm done. Like I'm tired, my knees hurt, my back hurts, whatever. I'm done. And then where are we coming in? Because the young people, it's not that you're not teaching good skills. I mean, I know you guys are, but there's a huge amount of experience and knowledge that, and maybe this is getting too down in the weeds. Help me out here, Zach. But it's like, how do we, from the architecture design side, it's like, as somebody who has a great deal of respect for the trades, because they're taking my drawings, they're putting those lines into reality, and that matters a lot. And I lean, if you've learned anything as a design on the design side, lean on your trades, lean on your contractors, because they will help you get through projects more effectively so many times. If you will say, hey, how do you think we should do this? Where do you think that duct run should be? Where do you think that, where do we need that main line for the plumbing or whatever? But that comes from experience. I like having that 58-year-old standing on the job site, because I'm like, where's the gray beard?
Well, and I mean, you see it more often than not now. That, I mean, that dude is, I mean, still supposed to be there, but from a management, from an instruction, from an educational position, but by the industry demand, that dude's still out there performing. That he's got
he's in the trench,
2 or 3 young bucks, and they're he's out there doing it. And so I feel like we're gonna run up to a stopgap of, like you said, when those guys are done, they're just gonna be done, and whatever level of knowledge and experience and wisdom for that trade that needs to be passed on, like it's a cold hard stop. Whether that's health related, whether that's they just they're able to retire, and typically more often than not, it's typically health related. Right. Guys just can't do it anymore.
How do you see, Terry, the education process working with that, like aligning the realities of job site, like what we're doing on the job, we're down in the trench, we're laying pipe, we're doing whatever. How do you teach that in a classroom? How do we do that?
Well, it's, you ask a good question on how to convey the real world experience in the classroom from an educator, right? So the issue with education, right? As soon as you become an educator and as soon as you step out of that classroom and step out of industry, your knowledge is unless you work exceptionally hard, you're only as good as your last day in the industry. And so what we do in a lot of the different programs, both at the 4-year and the 2-year level, we bring in industry professionals every chance we get. So I teach down at OU, we have a lab class, and it's their hands-on fundamental lab. And I'm taking green sophomores, right? And I'm teaching them, I'm putting tools in their hand and they're getting dirty and they're learning how to actually put material in place. Well, I bring in masons and foremans, and I bring in the trade professionals who have no college education.
Yeah.
And I bring them in and they're in front of these young people and they're working with them and they're teaching them what they picked up over the past 30 years. And it does two things. It reinforces what we're saying at the front of that classroom, because now it's someone else, right? It's someone who's actually doing this day to day, and they're saying the same thing as Professor Clinefelter saying. So, hey, maybe we're going to listen this time.
Right. Kind of along the same lines. Sorry, I'm really curious because for the GC side of things, you hear a lot, and whether it's true or not, you see these 4-year graduates leave, a construction management program, go to, typically, in our market, we've seen out of OU and OSU that the largest 10% typically of the general contractors get most of those graduates.
Mm-hmm.
But then, those young adults, they get stuck in a back office as a PE somewhere for 4 years. Sometimes maybe longer, that, they're just shuffling paperwork. The sentiment is that they are not prepared to be able to go into that role, that position, and, have the experience to be able to run a job. Now, granted, Kale and I were talking about this, before the episode. If you're going to a large firm, you're going to be on a large job. If you're fresh out of college, you're not going to be running a $50 or $75 million job. It's just not going to
No
happen.
way.
You need to sit in that back office for, 4 or 5 years to be able to get accustomed to it. But for the smaller side of the market, because there's many, small to mid general contractors that want to be hiring these graduates, that kind of level of concern of, well, are these guys even ready to fulfill what I need them to do? Because I almost need kind of a cut and ready kind of situation, just due to the size of the company. What would you say to the smaller or mid-sized companies that have that concern?
Well, what I'm going to say is not what you're going to want to hear.
That's fair.
Let's
I
go.
mean, the fact of the matter is if, and I love our industry, and we've always acknowledged that we have an issue in terms of getting good people in and getting them trained, yet we don't always take the steps to train them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the most successful mid-sized contractors I've seen in terms of recruiting, what they have done is they've addressed this from the start, and they go in and they get these young people as early as they can, and they get them in some fashion. So Aaron Owens with AC Owens, and I know you know him. Aaron came in to OSU OKC. He was a product out of the OU system or the OSU system in Stillwater, and he committed time. He committed resources in terms of scholarships, and he got his brand out there in front of some young people. And then he would pick them up as early as he can, either as part-time workers or internships, and he would take them in, understanding they're not going to know that much. Now, their pay is corresponding to that, but especially at OSU OKC or a 2-year college, I got all my students are working either a full-time or part-time job, and they might be making $12, $13 an hour. I know that most mid-sized contractors could find a role for someone like that for 12 or $13 an hour, and get some benefit out of them.
Oh, absolutely.
But now you're teaching them what you want them to know. You're bringing them into the fold and seeing if they're a good cultural fit. And if they are, you're the first person who's given them a chance. And for some of those communities, the first person to invest in those people, those young people, they're going to stay loyal for, I've seen, I'll see 18, 19-year-old people young people get a job and stay with a company for 7 years. That's unheard of for the younger generations, right? But you're going to have to invest. Like, you have to pick up those interns. You have to go out and have those conversations in front of the classroom saying, hey, this is Stronghold. This is what we do, and this is why we do it, right? And just like you're going to sell yourself to an owner or an architect, you got to sell yourself to that next generation of employees
for that early commitment. Which I'm glad you brought up. Kind of pay scale.
Keep wearing your OU shirt.
Yeah. And I think that's another challenge that we see is, which I wasn't there. I don't have firsthand knowledge of it, but I was told out of OSU there was a recruitment fair last year. I believe that there was 18 graduates out of that program for that semester. Something like 40 contractors showed up for this recruitment fair, which I mean, that's typical. Um, the most concerning thing to me was that there was 18 offers given, or 18 offers accepted out of all of those students, and the lowest offer accepted was $97,000.
Yeah. So I don't know. So you're saying that's OSU Stillwater?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know, I can't speak for them. I do know the salary average for our last round of graduates out of OU was right in mid to high 70s.
Okay.
So 74,000 to, I mean, there was some kids in there that had more experience and they sold themselves a lot better, and they were in the 80s. And there was a few kids that sold themselves probably a little worse and didn't have that much experience, and they were on the lower end of 70. I tell graduates, if they're coming out, you're going to be in the 70s. That's a good starting point. Some of the young people that have a lot more experience, my veterans, my former military kids, that have a little bit more age on them, and with age comes wisdom.
A little bit of professional wisdom.
Well, for most of them that I know, right?
Yeah, we know a lot of veterans.
Yeah, we know, but for them, some of those young people, they're going to get a little bit more. I mean, I know we're pushing. I think last numbers, OU's programs running around 250 students, and that just keeps growing and growing. We lose 50% of the students down to Texas because 50% of them are from Texas. And so that number is average between us and Texas. And so, I mean, it's a great career pathway. One thing you brought up, and I do a very, very hard, or I work very hard trying to sell it, is look at these smaller GCs, look at these specialty contractors, go out and work for some of them, because a lot of students, like you alluded to, have this concept they want to go work for this big shiny GC. That is a hard life.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, and
it can be.
I mean, I remember back to, at least when I was young in the industry, I wanted to be on the site with the tower crane and the 3 job trailers that are in tandem, and the helicopter lifts, and I mean, that sounded exciting. But and Kale, I'm sure that's a comparable for you.
But yeah, on the design side, the same way.
But knowing those guys and seeing those guys now, I mean, yeah, it's hard to explain that to a young person, that is in some cases a hellacious life.
I mean, we talk about it on the architecture side a lot, with the fact that we'll look at them, and I've had the opportunity to work like in Oklahoma. I've never worked out of the state. I stayed loyal here, and worked with mostly small to mid-sized firms. I liked knowing my bosses and being able to walk in and shake their hand, kind of thing. But there were a lot of students in the architecture program at Oklahoma State that, like, they would leave and go get that big job, and we would laugh about how you like in the bathroom details. And it's very similar. Like, you're sitting there in a back office drawing bathroom details and stair details for 2 or 3 years sometimes. And there's young, I say young, there are young people coming out of college now that are, out of those programs that are going to do that. It's the same thing again, and they'll be 10, 15 years getting to a level of experience that some of these other students that I watched dive into. I mean, my first internship was a design build firm. I literally was hauling steel on a flatbed as an architecture student over the summer, and it's like, there's something about that I really love, so.
Well, I alluded to it. Like I said, my wife's project manager. She's been in industry for 20 plus years now, got more experience than I do by far. And looking from the side of the spouse, right? So she's worked for small, medium-sized GCs, and she's worked for really large GCs. And the fact of the matter is when she was with a really large GC, that's a much harder lift and a harder ask for the family, on either side of it. And that's what I tell I call them all kids. They're not kids anymore.
Right.
I'm like, there's going to come a time, like, if you're good to travel and you don't care where you're at, and you're just ready to put in 50, 60 hours a week, do that for a few years, but understand it becomes more complex and harder the more complications you get. If you get that spouse, if you get those kids, if you get those aging parents, everything becomes a little bit harder when you have to be on site at 6 a.m., you know, 6 days a week, right? And it's, you guys, if you're in a small to mid-sized contractor, it it's more of a family. And if one of your employees says, "Hey, X, Y, and Z came up," and it is a family, you're going to say, "All right, I understand. Let's take care of it, and then let's take care of the job."
Yeah. I want to jump back a little bit. I, I love, which I didn't know that about you. You and I have similar backgrounds with, my dad was also trades, which he was on the electrical side, 70s, 80s. And you touched on it earlier, and is absolutely right. There was a sentiment about people in trades, just in construction as a whole. I described on an earlier episode, I saw a guy in a nicer polo and a nice truck roll up on a job site. I was probably 14, 15. And I was like, man, who's that guy? What does that guy do? Didn't even know. But, I think you see even into the early 2000s and even some of the 2010s, that was very much still lingering. At least from my perspective, we still see it today as far as just perspective on joining the industry. It may not be, like you said, there may be a lot more respect towards trades, towards construction
Mhm.
professionals. But as far as wanting to join the industry, unless you have a family member or someone, especially for these young people, that it's still kind of not necessarily taboo, but it's it's
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to be in construction. How have you seen that dynamic kind of change, and is it improving?
Well, through Construct My Future, we do a kids camp each year. We do it for 6th and 7th grade kids, and we just introduce them to different career pathways in construction. We do a questionnaire for the parents, right? And it's like, why do you want your kid? Because these are 6th and 7th graders. Like,
You're right.
the parents are signing them up to get rid of them for a week. And like they don't admit that on the entry form, and not all of them, but
Yeah.
what we do see is a lot of parents understand that the trades are financially stable careers.
Hmm.
Hmm.
They also understand that they don't have anyone in their social circles that are involved with them. And so they don't have anyone to have that conversation or to say to their kid, like, "Hey, go look at Uncle Billy. He's doing X, Y, and Z." So there is some realization, because the fact of the matter is all these parents have probably called a plumber, electrician, or HVAC guy out to get work done, and then gotten that bill. It was
Hmm.
like I wasn't asking you for you to replace the system. I just needed a repair, right?
Right.
Right.
And so we've broke that stigma. Um, it is changed because I think people are able to see, like, the plumber or the electrician that show up. They're not driving a beat up truck. They're driving a nice truck. They have nice tools. They present themselves well, and that speaks to a lot of the young people who are running these businesses, and they're running them like Fortune 500 companies. They take a lot of pride in their marketing. They take a lot of pride in how they're doing their job, and that is shown, and that's helped the industry. Um, they still they still need to make sure that it's communicated to these young people that there's great successful pathways.
Hmm.
And if I got two young daughters, if they were to come up and say, "Dad, we want to go into the trades, we want to go be an electrician," I'd be like, "Great. At some point, I want you to own the business. I don't just want you to
Right.
work in the business."
Right.
Right. So as long as that conversation is said, like, at some point you want to make your money with your mind and not your back,
Hmm.
Right.
just always keep pushing. But I think
Right.
it's getting better.
I mean, prospectively, I think, And Kel, I'd like your take on this, because I think there's a similar dynamic with architecture students. Um, how many of your students are coming in and going down, the general contracting or the CM side versus, alternative industry trades, or,
I mean, if we're looking at OU, the majority of them are going like general contractor, small, large, right? Um, if we look at OSU, OKC, or 2-year technical, because a lot of those people are working already, working while going to school, I'm probably going to say about 30% are going to be specialty contractors or in the trades. Right now, there's a young man working for a masonry contractor in a class. I have 2 electricians. I have a plumber, a roofer, a couple landscapers, and those are and some of them are looking to advance in their careers. Some of them might be looking at pivoting. I don't, what we have to do as a society is look at how we personify the career pathways in the trades, and and make sure we give them the same respect that we would give anyone that's a master of their skill. And what you're going to see, and sadly, like if you look at the masonry trade, right? And I have some friends who are really good masons, own companies, have are like 4th, 5th generation masons. The masonry trades have been slow to respond on getting young people in. It is a very grueling career pathway. I mean, everything's heavy.
Mhm.
And so because of that labor shortage, the cost goes up.
Right.
And so what industries started to do is they've started to respond to that by saying, all right, how can we modify the processes and the materials that are being used so that we either eliminate is the amount of labor that we have. You see that with ICFs, or we allow non-skilled, non-trained people to do the work and still get the same product. And so you see that the masonry industry is changing, going to thin brick applications that are going to be very, very different than true full bed masonry. And that's a function of the industry not being able to have enough people to be able to have a cost cost effective product at
Right.
times.
Yeah. We
So,
see that on the design side. We see a lot of new product innovation that we're seeing come out, I would say, in the last 24 months. And as I look to the future, everything's trying to get lighter. Everything's trying to get simpler. You want it to be somebody can run, a laser line down the wall, screw a clip in, and hang something on it, and that's your exterior finish. We want that more and more and more and more because it's less labor intensive, it's less skilled, it's all of those pieces.
Yeah, and you move from full bed masonry to thin brick. Your structural steel gets lighter, right? You don't have as much in the way of transportation costs because you can move so many more square feet of the material on a truck than if you're doing full bed. The equipment, you're not having to use the same hydro lift scaffolding. You don't have to have the same lifting equipment in terms of moving material around. Your material takes up less site on a space. And like you said, you don't need someone who's been a laborer and a mason for the past 15 years of their life. You need someone who can set up a laser and screw something in. And I hate to say that and I hate to see that.
Right. It gets down to that quality of care. But we also, what's interesting to me in the industry, and Zach, you can speak to this too. I'm seeing, so our firm, Green Couch, we straddle the line. We do commercial and residential design. There's groups out there that are trying to bring these more historic trades back in a stronger way. I see houses that are structurally brick houses. I've never seen a structurally brick, or structural masonry house in years and years and years. And we've got groups trying to do it in Oklahoma City. We've got ICF making a rise, which is kind of a borderline of what you're talking about. They're trying to save money, but there's innovations happening in different ways that I see. I mean, I'm also seeing a rise in on the residential side with people actually caring about real quality framing,
Mhm.
which is shocking because you don't think of people thinking about that. But they've lived in enough houses and had them shift and move in
Mhm.
Oklahoma and expand and contract. And they're like, I really care about my framing being done well here. I really feel like I want to make sure that I'm getting that quality, or I want brick, I want structural masonry home. I want those things. And so I do see it's because there's a little bit of an exclusivity to it that's maybe making it desirable on a higher end basis. Like these are luxury homes. These are not your average home. But it's really interesting to me how the market shifts in those different ways. Um, I mean, I don't
Well,
know
if
what you're seeing on the commercial side, Zach, but
well, you start seeing people move to that 50-year mortgage, right?
Oh, geez.
They better be getting a good product if they're going to
right?
be. Yeah, you come out 25 years old, you get your first house, and by the time you pay it off, you're dead. You
Yeah.
know,
Well, Terry, I know we got a little short on time today. We definitely want to have you back on another podcast. Before
Yeah.
we wrap up, got just a couple quick ones that I really want to touch
go
on
for it.
before I let you bail. Is the next generation lazy, or are they just smarter about balance?
No, so the next
Wow.
generation, yeah, I got to be careful how I answer this, right?
I'm like, ugh.
Well,
No,
and the preface of that question, there's a sentiment that Gen Z millennials is now kind of out of that young adult phase. So we're predominantly in Gen Z, coming up on Gen Alpha, coming in the honey badgers, and the broader sentiment is that they're lazy. But I'm also hearing really good things from really Navy SEALs. There was a commander that said there were some really interesting things about Gen Z.
so what I've seen, and I was talking with someone this week about it. So the new generation, right, is they'll follow the rules. They don't want to step out. I was getting questions about, hey, Terry, we need to get this done at our frat house, or we need to get this repaired. Oh, we need to get a licensed contractor. And I'm thinking back to when I was in college. I'm like, I think we would have just done that and seen if it worked. But
Mm,
like they're going to follow those rules. When you talk about them using technology, the ability for them to operate either with AI, Bluebeam, any of these computer software systems, they're running laps around me, and and what they're missing at times is they don't quite understand the benefits of some of the older ways of doing things. And I'm having to stop and say, all right, what are the benefits that they're using? Now they'll
Mm,
figure a way out. Um, some students, some of the younger people have a little bit of a hard time making that step, or like stepping outside of the directions and
sure.
saying, all right, how do I figure it out? And I think that's because the way we've raised them is like, you have to follow the rules. If you don't
Mhm.
follow the rules, bad things happen.
yeah, bad
Sure.
things.
Where like, my parents just kicked me outside and said, go away.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
at some point, come back.
Yeah,
Hmm.
come back when the street lights come on.
I did hear on another podcast last night that there was a study done that it essentially determines creative genius. 98% in this study, 98% of 5-year-olds tested as a creative genius. It dropped to, I believe, in the 30s or 40s by age 10, and by age 15, it was about 2%. And that is by training. That is by how we are bringing these young people up. One more for me, and I know Kale has one. Kind of re-summarizing, for the people that are thinking, I just can't find good people, I can't find good individuals. I do think that there is more interest coming to the younger generation for construction and construction management and architecture and design. Uh, I feel like that the summary there was investment. Go chase them, go invest in them. Would you want to add any more to that?
Well, I mean, both of you guys, you invest in getting that next job, right? You go out and you work owners, you do bid solicitation, you're trying to promote your business, right? You should be doing the same thing when it comes to this next generation of young people. If you're not promoting your business, is the ones who are out there, it's brand recognition. The reason these big GCs have a easier time is because they have 50, 60 trucks driving around the metro area that say Flintco, Jadon, Crosslands,
Right.
Manhattan. you know, you need to be out there saying, "Hey, we're out here too," and you need to be taking that time and taking that investment. And it's maybe it's a day a month. Reach out to your local, to your college, technical trade school, for your college. Talk to a faculty member and say, "Hey, I'd love to get in front of your kids. Can that
Yeah.
can that work?" And they're
Yeah.
all going to say yes.
It's awesome.
Yeah, they can't. It's been a real, and I don't have another question. Technically, I have kind of a lead in.
Spoken like an architect.
Yep. See what
Can't
I got to
help it,
deal
guys.
with.
I am what I am. I see that with. I've had the opportunity to work with our VOTEC technical schools on the east side of Oklahoma City,
Mhm.
and help with their student development. Come in, I've taught a few classes, and we've talked about, guest speaking on those things I mean, it's like, hey guys, this is what real world looks. This is what real world looks like. My lead in, and if you have a comment on here, make it brief. I know you have to go, but I think one of the things we want to bring you back and talk about in more detail, or at least I'm really interested in, how is AI, how is technology, how are those elements? Because we're seeing it impact our industry on the design side
Oh
drastically.
yeah.
How are those things impacting education? How are those things impacting specifically construction and how you educate construction? And I know that's a whole episode in itself, but if you have like a 5-second soundbite, give it to me.
Well, so I mean, here's the thing: is if you're not embracing AI, you're basically making that buggy whip, right? So you better get comfortable with it because it ain't changing. What my students use it for and what they're going to benefit from is I tell them it's a tool, right? Use it as a tool. And as long as you are the one using that tool and it's not using you, you're always going to have an employment. The issue that I see is that these young people don't have enough experience to be able to look at something that AI spits out and say, "Man, that's crap." Right? Right?
Right.
And I see it in their homework at times,
Mm.
and I know it's going to happen in industry that you have to have enough experience to be like, "Yeah, no, no,
Yeah.
that's not going to work,"
It's
right?
like a word.
And so it's now we're teaching them to say, "All right, why would that work and why would it not? How can we be critical of what that answer is? And do you feel comfortable with that?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Love it.
Well, and
Thank
at
you,
least
sir.
in our company, we say that because we love ChatGPT.
Mhm.
It is a great tool, but I
Yeah.
tell all of our people, it is stupid little brother. It is not an expert. It is
Yeah.
stupid little brother. But well, Terry, thank you for joining us. It for myself, and I know Kale shares this sentiment, to see somebody that is educating the young people in Oklahoma and just in the broader industry, that has as much care for the industry and care for their academic growth and entering the industry prepared. You're building the next generation of builders and leaders, and I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the time investment that you've placed in that, and for the broader industry. I know that they're very appreciative.
Appreciate it.
Well, that's it for episode 5 of Constructive Criticism. Thank you, Terry, again for being our first guest. I hope we have you back.
Love it.
New episode every Friday. You can find us
Nice.
on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. So we'll see you for episode 6.
All
See you
right.
guys.
Thanks, Terry.